Well, 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 do we have a treat for you? Jonathan Gravenor is going to be with me talking in his capacity as an incredible man. I think this is something you really want to see. So, welcome on the replay. If we don't know each other, my name is Poppy Sprague. I'm a psychologist, psychotherapist, and a coach. And Jonathan, I searched for a forgive me as well, because I'm going to be sharing this just for a couple of minutes. I searched for something for some student work I was doing, and Jonathan's, it's that typical when you're looking for something even greater and more wonderful appears sometimes, a bit of magic and miracles, and it happened. And as a consequence, I got in touch with him and said, my friend, you are a man I would like to know. And I really wanted you guys to meet him. I'm so very excited to share the screen with what a wonderful, wonderful guy. And we'll see where we go with it. There's no real agenda. It is just to share the wealth, share what we know, hear a bit of Jonathan's story and have him tell us where he's been, what he's learned, and use us to question, make comments, say what it is that you're moved by. I'm mindful he's just hopping on now. Man plans and God laughs, so they say. Hopefully it will work beautifully. So where is he? Something didn't work there, so we'll keep going with it and bear with us. This is just us doing life. It's going to be amazing, says Chris. Big time, in a big old way. We just want to make sure that we do this in a way that suits us. He's watching, so let's send lots of hearts and visualize that this works beautifully. Yay! Fantastic. How wonderful. Here he is, the man himself. I'm so happy to have you here, Jonathan. Thank you for you in advance. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine now.
Wow. How's it feel to be on Facebook Live with all of us wonderful ones?
It's lovely to be up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning here in Sydney.
Isn't it great? Listen, I'm just curious for a second, I'm mindful of people watching. How many of you have seen Jonathan's TED Talk? Put a 1 in the box if you have. And if you haven't, I will tag it on here after we're live. What a phenomenal, can I just ramble for a moment? Is that all right with you?
Yes.
I tell you what I loved about it and why I selfishly wanted to be sharing you with a lot of people on these pages is the humility and your preparedness in your TED Talk to just say, in my opinion, what many of us think but don't say. The kind of judgments that we have of ourselves, of other people, the kind of fear-based stuff, the kind of keeping people at a distance and so on. And it fascinated me, your integrity, your straight talk. And honestly, I don't know if you've seen the comments, but some of the feedback from these guys has just been, wow, what a guy. Equally a man to talk about emotional issues so openly. It was really inspiring for so many. So that's one of the reasons why I just thought this is somebody who is living life with an open heart, or at least that's how it came across. So I thought, what a beautiful way to introduce you and be more like you. So I'm curious to know more and how you live your life and what you've learned.
Well, for those that didn't see the TED Talk and don't know much about me, yes, I live in Australia, and this is a Northern Sydney accent. No, it's a Canadian accent. Born and raised in Canada. A brief history. I got into journalism at a young age, and from being a presenter to a reporter, eventually I became a foreign correspondent, and that's how I wound up here covering the South Pacific and Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, I had my partner Marina and my daughter Alyssa with me, dragging them around the world. In February of 2012, a doctor diagnosed me with late-stage throat cancer. which is perfect for a broadcast journalist, to be told that you might never talk again, and then also be told that any communication you had might only last for a few months because you might not live. That night when I was diagnosed, my daughter told me that she didn't care if I lived or died. And she was in her early 20s at the time, so it was something much deeper than just teenage angst. And the truth is suddenly after yelling at her through locked doors and screaming at her internally in my mind that night as I lay in bed, with a million voices screaming at me from inside, I came to realize that the man I had become was not the kind of man I really wanted to be. I had only ever seen myself through the reflection that I got from other people as to who I was because of my fame, so I had a certain amount of reverence and power. And I had not seen I was the man that had not told my daughter for a decade that I loved her or held her close and made her feel safe. So that started me on my journey. Journey of self-reclamation, journey of apology, just a journey to anywhere else but where I was at. You know, it was, I came in that part of the journey, and I remember listening to a Wayne Dyer talk, and he talked about Max Planck, one of the scientists, or the scientist who created the study of quantum physics. And then as I looked at the work of Max Planck and I looked at the work of Einstein, who were probably the two brightest men that I knew academically, had read, I realized that they talked a lot about spirituality and things that they did not know. That whilst they could describe to you the atom and how it floated there and how that was in its own little universe, they could not describe the higher power that must have created it. So I came over the fear of death and realized that there must be something beyond this. But what I did fear in dying was I feared who I was leaving behind. Would my epitaph be, "Thank God the asshole's gone"? So I knew that with whatever time I had, I wanted at the very least to say sorry to all those in my life, and those in my life I didn't even know. I think maybe after 6 years now, the two greatest lessons I've learned are learning to say sorry and learning to admit that I'm wrong. I reclaimed the relationship with my daughter, and we're closer than we've ever been.
Wow.
And I took off for 2 years, traveling the world, India, Nepal, Europe, South America, anywhere and everywhere, in a journey that I think we all want to go on or go on sometime in our life, that journey to find ourselves. Didn't know I wasn't lost though, but I went out there and found out a lot. Found out a lot about myself more than anyone else, and started the eternal shift, if you will, towards something that I'm still not quite sure what it is, but all I know is that at the times that I dropped the guard of my ego and quit looking at myself to how good my hair is or how nice the shoes I'm wearing or how good a car I'm driving is. And when I connect at the very base level with myself and with others around me, that there's I don't want to say a level of comfort, but maybe a level of peace. Because sometimes in this journey, a lot of times I cry. And it isn't just a crying because I'm sad, because God knows I do that really well, but also crying sometimes that I'm happy. In this journey, I started really contemplating what is a soul, and started to fall into my ego of that. And after a few years of traveling and touring and reading and studying under great shamans and gurus and talkers, I I thought I knew what a soul was, and really started to believe that I must have an exceptional soul, or at least one that was very evolved, and that I was awakened. And I remember one day walking here, and Sydney's this beautiful place to walk. I don't live very far from the bridge, so I make this walk along the foreshore of the harbor, looking out over the Opera House and Sydney Bridge. It's really a cool spot. And I remember walking there. And there under the bridge is a beautiful parked area. And it's lovely and quiet, but it roars with its silence, that you can hear the wind whisper through the trees. You can hear water cut itself open as it breaks into little waves. And then suddenly that silence was broken by the sound of a child screaming. And I looked around, and about 20 meters from me, there was a little boy, maybe 5 or 6, screaming and looking at the ground. So I ran over thinking he was hurt, and realizing there before him on the ground was a little tiny lorikeet, which is to us, which aren't endemic to Australia, it looks like a little tiny parrot. It's green and orange and blue and yellow. It's a beautiful little bird, but it was lying motionless on the ground. And I thought it must have died. Maybe it ran into one of the pillars of the bridge and fell there. And this little boy was screaming. And I turned to him and looked and realized this little boy had Down syndrome. And my first thought was a terrible thought of judgment, thinking, because the discussion in my head was all upon souls. And I thought, well, gee, maybe a child with Down syndrome does not have a soul. This poor little child, where is he going to go? Where is he going to be? Is he just this lump of mass that exists here? His mother ran over and immediately started to talk to me, and I kind of registered it in, and she was saying he gets so sad when he sees things go, that he gets like this. I'm sorry if he's disturbing you. I said, no. So then he ran off, and he came back with some twigs and sticks and stuff, and he started to cover over the little bird on the ground like he was making it a grave. A couple of meters away was a little bench, so I went and sat with his mother as he continued to do this. Leaves and stuff made this little thing, and then he knelt in front of it. Then he ran away, and he got this stick that was sort of bent on an angle like an arm, and he brought it to me, and he tapped my arm, and he showed me the stick. And I realized maybe I was the stupid one, not him, that he saw things. Anyways, then he came and sat between his mother and I as we talked, and he nestled up against me and grabbed my arm and leaned into me. And again, I wondered about my stupidity. We sat there for a few minutes, and the sound of the wind was louder than it was when I first came there, filled with the judgment of the day. Suddenly, we heard a chirp and a rustle, and we looked down, and the little bird had stuck its head up between the leaves and the twigs and kind of looked around like this and gave us a look like, well, what's all this about? And then broke through these little branches. It must have just been stunned, and then took off up into the sky.
Oh my word.
Well, little fella, he got up and ran around and danced, ran in circles, watching the bird fly higher and higher and higher, then out under the bridge and through, and he kept laughing and dancing. I stayed with him for a while and talked and laughed. And then I left, humbled by my ignorance and arrogance, and humbled realizing that this thing I think is a soul is not this intelligent creature which can sit and judge people and determine the quality of who they are based upon whether that they can debate with me on any sort of esoteric level. The quality of a soul is based upon the love it shows. And here, maybe I was the soulless one. Maybe a soul is like a handbag that we can carry around, and when we're really good, we get to hold it close. And when we're not so good, it just dangles from our hand by our side. So, in the past before, when I was the man on TV, I would not have given that moment to that little boy or his mother or the bird lying on the ground. I would have wondered if it was going to get in my way of the day of me achieving something bigger and better. And I think that day, like many days now, I learned a lesson. And sorry, I kind of rambled on.
Please don't be sorry. And I think this is the thing that's kind of warped about our culture is we apologize when we move into connection, when we move in. I mean, people are saying, I mean, I can barely speak. A man with feelings, it's coming at us. A human being that's willing to talk about feeling. I mean, good Lord, Jonathan, that's extraordinary. And I imagine has dropped many of us. I don't want to talk for you, but I'm going to because I can't talk to you all right now. Really moved us to come back to what is important. And then you apologize for it. And I think this is what we do. I'm sorry that I'm an emotional being when actually you may have just shocked us all back to life for a moment. That's kind of like a gift, kind of big time.
Well, I think also being Canadian, endemically, we've learned to say sorry from the moment we're born. We're a very apologetic people.
And I think that's an epidemic. I mean, obviously, I'm a psychologist over here, is we apologize for our existence, and we very much exist with this judgment of not enough me or not enough you. And that, I mean, there's a preparedness that you have to pause and be, which is extraordinary and so life-giving. And that's very much what comes out in your talk. And that was very much why I was moved to say, oh my word, let's get him. And here you are. I'm so grateful for you. But for me,
well, I sensed the moment you reached out to me, you sent me the video message. I sensed in you my sister.
Your sister?
I meant in a metaphorical way, that I could tell we've kind of walked along the same path once in a while. And I felt comfortable, so I reached back, and since then we talked every day, and it's been really cool.
I'm so grateful. I mean, truly, you're an earth angel in my land. You know, this is profoundly important. Is it not? Let's have a 2 in the box. If this is something that you've gone, hang on a minute, maybe there's another way to reframe sometimes. How many people would feel, you know, frustrated or condemning of a little boy with no malice? That's my consistent experience with people with Downs. There's no malice there. Often there is an ability to do what many of us fear, which is yay or no. They're in their feelings. When
I think the only malice exists in our judgment.
Quite. So please, all of us, please, let's stop with the apology for being human and making a connection and inviting other people to make a connection. This is the thing that's killing us. I'm a psychologist. I deal with the fallout of people who aren't connected. They're the suicidal ones, obviously, and the ones who are anxious and addicted and overwhelmed and hating and so on. So you're a gift, and we need to celebrate and take a leaf out of your book and many books. What is the name of your book? Is it the title of your talk?
The Other Side of Ego. Putting it in context, I'd taken off around the world, and I was a journalist for 30 years, but never in that time, particularly being a broadcaster, did I consider myself to be a writer. So I had gone to India, and I was in Chennai, and I had gone to a healing session that was really powerful, and then also started a seminar. And I remember I was staying along with a group of people at the Leyland Hotel in Chennai, and it's an amazing place. It sits on the banks of the Bay of Bengal, and I had grown up reading Rudyard Kipling, and Kipling would often talk about the Bay of Bengal and the history of the place, but more so than the physical history of the place, there's a metaphysical history of the place. It's just amazing. So I remember when I first walked into my room and I opened the drapes, and there before me was the Bay of Bengal, this beautiful piece of water, and then just to the left were slums, where tens of thousands of people live.
Slums.
Just in the bottom. So that night that I, after we'd gone through this long spiritual healing and talked, I remember hitting the bed around 9 o'clock that night. My head just hit the pillow, and boom, I was gone. I was just so drained. 1 o'clock in the morning, because I remember I sat up straight in bed and I looked over at me and the digital clock was dead on 1 o'clock. And my head was filled, but not with 1,000 thoughts. My head was filled so clear. It was like there was this single beam of light coming through me of absolute clarity. So I went immediately to the desk in front of the window, opened the window, and there was the Bay of Bengal again, only this time with a full moon. And it was like shaved diamonds had been tossed across the water because it was all sparkly. And as I looked at the slums, you could see people out at 1 o'clock in the morning, fires lit by the water, washing clothes, doing stuff, but there was this ambiance to the place. And it hit me, absolute clarity. And so I opened up my laptop and I typed, and I typed, and I typed, and I wrote for 12 straight hours without stopping. I would stop for a few minutes, read what I wrote, and I'd start to cry for the first time in my life. I actually liked what I wrote, and I wasn't writing someone else's story as I had it as a journalist. I was writing my own.
Wow.
So that's how the book started, and I just had come to the realization in that, and it wasn't anything that I was writing for anyone else, nor is it, this is the other side of ego, was not a self-help book. It's a personal memoir from the moment that I was told I might die with cancer to the moment at the year of 5 years when they said, hey, you made it through, you're going to live. And the people I met along the ways, the losses, the gains. There were a lot of people. I met a lot of friends with cancer and lost a lot of them. And I just wanted to write about it.
Thank you for doing so. Does he move you? Let's have a 3 in the box if you're feeling things as a consequence. What an incredible, thank you for having the bravery to actually put words to stuff that people go silent throughout their lives about this stuff. I'm just in awe of you, truly. I'm so grateful for you being here. Thank you. Can you take that, brother?
I try.
Is it difficult for you sometimes to get feedback from people about how you impact them?
No, it's difficult for me to accept compliments. It's difficult
Right.
because I lived a life surrounded by them. And sometimes because of the indiscretions of my past, I do not feel worthy.
Right.
And sometimes I still, going through this, we all have different game plans as to what we want to get, no matter how spiritual we think they are. And mine was to get to an awakened state or an enlightened state. The first state I've gotten to that I'm still in is a state of awareness. So I'm profoundly aware of everything I say and do and feeling I have and the contradictions that I live in. It was killing me. It was killing me because I would sit there and all of a sudden start judging someone again and immediately see it, then start the process of self-lacerations, beating myself, going, what the fuck are you doing? Who are you? You're still a bastard.
Wow.
I watched an interview that the Dalai Lama did. And he was asked about his relationship with the Chinese government. And I'm sure most of you are aware that Tibet and the Buddhists, Dalai Lama cannot go back. He's been pushed out by the Chinese government. The Chinese government has gone in, taken over military control of Tibet, and they've even talked about appointing their own Dalai Lama the next time when this Dalai Lama passes away. Monks have gone to protesting in the streets. They've locked them up. They've forever. Many monks go out and they set themselves on fire in public places to bring protest and notice to it. And this, the Dalai Lama has to carry with him. And so he was asked about his relationship with the Chinese government and how much he must hate them and despise them for what they have done to him, to his people. And his answer was, well, no, I don't. I love them. And each and every day I wake and I wish them love and care, attention, and I give them all the empathy I can. And I practice that every single day. And it made me realize if there was one person in this world who is enlightened, it would be the Dalai Lama, though he has never said he is. And it is not because he has reached a state. It is because he continues to climb that mountain of self-awareness, and every day he must charge through the bricks of contradiction and find his way towards a peak that he can never reach, like all of us. And it is not getting to that plateau. It's the process of reaching forward, but whilst reaching forward is enjoying or feeling every single step. And you can't count the steps. You can't measure them.
No.
You can just be.
You can just be, yeah. So what about
I've silenced you. I've silenced Poppy Sprague. I'm impressed.
I quite like the silent pause, honestly, to just look at you, honestly, to just give the space to the silence sometimes feels really important. It's a disruptor, you know?
Well, it's funny, you know what? And I made that comment, I've silenced you. And for those of you that know, we got on for our first video chat the other day as I was walking to work. And there is a pure dichotomy in me, one that teases and jokes.
Oh.
And I admitted to you why I do it. And you knew it right
Just
away.
pause
That I
it.
use my...
Jonathan, could you say that again? We had a disruptor, of course,
Okay.
to just be
Sorry.
perfectly symbolic about it.
I was saying the other day, Poppy and I got on our first video call just to have a quick chat with each other. And as I was walking to work, and as we did, I was teasing and making humor and jokes the entire way along. And I admitted to you something that you knew right away, that I use humor as a defense. And then I started to see in other people how. I remember there was a fellow I work with, I'm in a new place, and he was very angry at me, or I took his anger at me as something I had done, or maybe he was unwilling to be open or whatever. And I realized that day, after talking with you and realizing my own defense, which is humor, that we all have these armors we use to protect the spot we're in, even though we do not want to be in that spot. We will protect any little piece of landmass we have. And I don't apologize for using the humor. I am thankful that I now recognize it. And then I can step away from it and realize, whilst I can make a good joke, I can make a better companion.
Amen. Ting, ting. Give me a hand hug on that one. Definitely. I love your humor. I think it's beautiful, but quite right what you're saying. This is one of the a bit of a thesis that I often offer is we all have these defenses that in childhood they would have served us extraordinarily, kept us sane and alive and a roof over our head and connected somewhat, or at least acknowledged. And in adulthood, it backfires because when we want to get connected and someone's laughing at themselves and basically saying, I'm a joke, let's all laugh at me, we often feel really isolated and in company, which is devastating. That is an epidemic. That I know, big time. So to be able to catch ourselves when we do things that don't serve us, phenomenal. Because then you can be really fully in your joke, you know, when you use humor because actually you want to connect from that place consciously. I bet you're like ridiculously funny, that it's just welcoming, as opposed to when it backfires, because so many people do this stuff. And I love how aware you are about it.
I can enjoy my humor, and at times I do, but I recognize in it too the ability of it to run away, or
Yes.
or run faster than I'm willing to go. And in that, in humor, then I have made more bad comments trying to be funny than I have trying to be honest. The ability to contemplate does not lie in the ability to make others laugh. The ability to contemplate lies in hearing what you were saying and hearing what those others are saying to you.
Yeah.
And contemplation to me is the greatest gift that we've been given. You know, I lived in the news industry for several decades. And our job is to go out and get reaction from people, get them at a
Yeah.
point of impact when you're going to get something really saucy or something very reportable. But when we got that, did we really get the truth? When you ask someone in anger about something, are you really reaching into them and getting their truth? Or are you just getting a scraping off of the covering that they have to protect themselves? And then indeed, when you sit with someone quietly and listen to them for a period of time, let them bleed off their anger and their frustration and then get to the core of how they truly feel, is when we get a level of truth that is a gift. So I get disappointed in myself when I fall down the trap of going into humor, because I can't entertain that way and pull people towards me and have people go, oh, isn't he dry and witty? It's sometimes when I can talk and people cry, or when I listen to them and I cry, that I realize that we have broken down the walls of ambiguity and gotten into something much more important.
I love you. You are incredible.
I love you too,
Truly.
my sister.
What a man. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you got your voice. You kept it. You kept alive. You stayed here and you did do something so incredible with it. It's just extraordinary. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. You're a good friend, and I think we're going to be friends for a long, long time.
Me too. Now I'm about to cry, says Jill. How have you done it? Because this was life threat. This was throat cancer. How are you still here in your mind? How have you done that?
I remember after my surgery, you get what's called a radical neck dissection. I've got a scar that runs from behind my right ear down to my Adam's apple. They took out a golf ball sized tumor. And when I woke up from my surgery, after a few minutes, the doctor came to my bed and said they had not got it all and they couldn't find the primary. So I was scheduled in to do radiation and chemo. I spent weeks and weeks doing radiation and chemotherapy, trying to use poisons to kill the disease before it killed me. After you get out of chemo and radiation, it's not like you've taken a class and you get a diploma at the end to say, congratulations, you've just completed this. You're told you have to wait 5 years until they can be certain, as far as they can, that you might be cured. The only contact you have back with it all is that you have to go to oncologists and surgeons on a regular basis. And I remember going to my oncologist one day, Now, oncology is separated into departments for those of you that haven't had cancer. So breast cancer patients usually go to a separate oncologist than I went to. I went to an oncology department for head and neck cancers. Now, head and neck cancers visually are the most brutal cancers there are, because you cannot hide them under a layer of clothing. You cannot hide them under a scarf that's taken your hair. And you have to stare at them every day that you go into the bathroom and brush your teeth. And so I remember going in one day and the room was full, as it always is. Felt like an elevator. We played this game of avoiding each other as much as possible. And I took the only seat left and I looked across at a man I had noticed when I came in, and he had a tumor or something that had covered his completely left side of his face across his eye, reaching out to his nose. It was hard to look at. It was hard to look away. I peeked long enough to see his wife grabbing his arm and nuzzling in next to him with a great deal of fear in her eyes. And I imagine that fear was for two things: that she might lose him, and that fear was also for how he felt about himself. I picked up a magazine and quickly put it in front of me to pretend I was reading so I didn't have to look up. After a moment, I realized the magazine was upside down, so I had to kind of felt it like this, turned it around to pretend I was looking at a picture. I straightened the magazine and went back to reading it while taking peeks at him and trying to make sure while I peeked at him, he did not peek back at me, so that we did not have to connect and I did not have to share his pain. 'I stopped. there was some sort of foolishness, it seemed to me, that people like us going through such a battle could not connect in some way or the other. And I went to my default of humor. So I looked up and I waited till he looked at me, his one eye. And as he looked at me, I said, you know, our oncologist, he thinks that he's a proctologist too. So if he sneaks up on your blind side, he might be up to something. The room fell silent when all of a sudden I could see his one eye start to smile. And then all of a sudden he broke into the biggest laughter I ever heard. I started to laugh with him and the entire room started to laugh. And then suddenly we weren't this room of just victims. We were warriors in a battle, and we were sharing our war stories, our diagnosis, our prescriptions for getting better. And then we started talking about footy. We started talking about music. We started talking about everything. He went into the oncologist's office first, and when he came out, he looked at me and he smiled and he patted his butt like he had been seeing a proctologist. As they went out the door, his wife turned to me and just mouthed, "Thank you." And I just kind of shrugged like, what for? A little bit later, when I got into the same office, after going through the normal examination where they dig their fingers in and looking for tumors or other growth, and then they stick this microscope thing down through your nose and that, Stephen, my oncologist, turned to me and said, "Thank you." And he said, "Rod hasn't smiled or laughed in a year since I started treatment on him. I've never seen him this happy." And I said, "Don't thank me. It's just..." When I got up, Stephen patted my butt. And I realized a good joke can go a long ways.
Yes.
I went out, some of the people still waiting in the office, us, the elevator riders that had been silent, smiled, waved, and said, "Have a good day. Hope you're doing well." I went down to my car, started driving out of the parking lot, turned onto one of the back roads that Sydney has, and I had to pull over immediately. I broke into tears. Now, all this time when I was going through all this treatment, I had told my daughter and my partner, Marina, that I did not want them to come with me. I was going to do it alone. I called her, as I always did after one of my appointments, just to tell her how I was doing, and she was tearing up when I said, the doctor said I'm doing well. I came to the realization that day that I was tearful and I was happy and I was sad, not because I was such a brave man. I was happy because I had met the bravest man I know. A man that was so scarred by this vile disease opened his heart and let me in and let me crack a really bad joke and then told me about himself and showed me the power of humanity when it at its absolute best. That day when I was talking to Marina, she said, "I wish I had been there." And I said, "I wish you had too," for the first time. And I came to the realization that I was not going to get better until, number one, I admitted I was sick, but number two, even more powerful, I admitted it, I need help. I could not rely just upon myself to cure myself when my disease had been proportioned to me because I had isolated myself from the world and made myself something that I did not want to be. And I think that's why I'm here. I'm not here to deliver some great big message. I'm here to live a life I hadn't.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk.
Would you be up for doing it again one day?
Anytime you need me, I'm here.
We need you.
We need you.
We need each other. So how about we get together and we're here for each other, all of us, again. We could talk, you and I, and make a time and do it. We need each other. You're quite right. Yes. And maybe you'll get good at accepting compliments because Wow. There's plenty coming your way, my wonderful, wonderful brother.
And just so we all know, I'm the younger brother, the much, much younger brother.
Of course, I know, of course. Do we have a deal?
Yeah. Anytime you need me, I'm here. You're my very good friend.
Pinky promise? Hooray! Fantastic. Okay, well, I had said to Jonathan initially, let's keep it to half an hour because of time. There's no way. There's no way. I don't know how much time we've gone, but bless you for your time. And let's do this big time. So shall we say goodbye for now? Please see the TED Talk. I'm going to post it here. And we'll have a chat, Jonathan, offline now and come back again.
Okay.
Okay. God love you. Thank you for you.
God love you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.